Good afternoon, all. We will continue with our series on the prophet Ezekiel. Today is part 3. We will eventually get started with Ezekiel, the 9th chapter, the first verse. 911. Well, it's similar to that, but not as conspiratorial. This was their own fault. Let those who have charge over the city draw near. He's talking about the angels that came to do them in a way. In his vision of Jerusalem and the corruptions at the temple, we saw these profoundly evil actions of the priests and the women last week in Ezekiel 8. Ezekiel heard Yahweh Elohim speaking with a loud voice, calling forth 6 men who, in some sense, had charge over the city of Jerusalem. Those who had charge over the city were those whom Elohim set to watch over the welfare of the city. These were not earthly agents, but heavenly. In other words, angels. Angels are frequently called men because of their outward appearance. Let me explain that a little bit. How could something with 4 faces be a man? Other than their 4 faces and their hooves as feet, they are largely made similar to mankind in all other features. And that's why they were called also men. And like the Creator himself, he made them somewhat like himself, but not exactly. We begin with Ezekiel, the 9th chapter, the first verse. And he called in my ears with a loud voice, saying, they have come near, the punishers of the city, and each with his weapon of destruction in his hand. And look, 6 men coming from the way of the upper gate that faced northward, and each with his weapon for shattering in his hand. And one man was in the midst of them, dressed in linen, and the writing case of the scribe was at his side. And they came and stood beside the bronze altar. And the story of Elohim and the glory of the Elohim of Israel lifted himself up from upon the cherub that he was on, and went to the threshold of the house. And he called to the man who was clothed in linen with a scribal writing case at his side. And Yahweh Elohim said to him, go through the midst of the city, in the midst of Jerusalem, and you must place a mark on the foreheads of those men who are groaning and lamenting about all of the detestable things that are being done in the midst of her. In other words, the ones that didn't agree with it. that were lamenting about it and groaning about it instead of going along with it. Verse 5, and to the others he said in my hearing, go through the city behind him and kill. Your eyes shall not pity, and you shall not have compassion. You must kill totally old men, and young women, and little children and women. But concerning every man with a mark on him, you must not approach. And from my sanctuary you must begin. Get my people first. They knew my word. In other words, they knew what they were supposed to be doing, and they were doing something else. Get them first. And they began with the old men who were before the house. And he said to them, defile the house and fill the courtyards with the dead. Go out. And they went out. And they killed in the city. And then as they were striking, as I was left behind, I fell on my face and I cried out. And I said, O sovereign Yahweh, will you be destroying all the remnant of Israel while you pour out your rage on Jerusalem? And he said to me, the guilt of the house of Israel and Judah is exceedingly great, and the land is filled with blood guilt, and the city is full of injustice. Sounds like someplace else, as I said last week. These things come to us not by accident. A lot of what's in this Bible continues to go on and gets worse every day in this world. And you see that if you see the Bible. A lot of people don't read it anymore. I can't read that, it's boring. You watch TV all day though. For they say, Yahweh abandoned the land, and Yahweh does not see. He flipped that on them later if you want to go there. Verse 10, and my eye will not take pity, and I will not have compassion. Their way I will bring on their heads. And look, the man clothed in linen and with a writing case at his side was bringing back a word saying, I have done all you commanded me. And he killed them all. Those without the mark. His mark, by the way. The mark of Yahweh Elohim I'm talking about. Ezekiel, the 10th chapter, the 1st verse. And I looked, and look, on the expanse that was above the head of the cherubim, something like a stone of sapphire, and like the appearance of the shape of a throne. And it appeared above them, and he spoke to the man clothed in linen, and said, go in among the wheel area under the cherubim, and fill the hollow of your hands with coals of fire from among the cherubim, and toss them into the city. Hold your finger here for a second. Fill your hands with coals of fire from among the cherubim, or their vehicles. I haven't been able to figure out what these things are yet. I'm saying vehicles for nothing else to say. It didn't say vehicles anywhere. That's just me. This was the command directed to the man clothed with linen, who was the one who marked the faithful few in Jerusalem in Ezekiel 8. Elohim commanded the angel to take the burning coals and scatter them all over the city. Previously, we read that Jerusalem would be judged by siege, slaughter, famine, and disease. Now we learn that Jerusalem will also be burnt, and the fire comes from the throne and glory of Yahweh Elohim himself. The coals of fire came from among the cherubim, thrown from the wheels in a wheel, or whatever that thing is that they were riding on, the cherubim. Emphasis on fire in this chapter is noteworthy, but because it looks forward to the fire which destroyed Jerusalem in 586 BC. Just ahead of us. Continuing at Ezekiel, the 10th chapter, the 2nd verse. And he went right before my eyes. Now the cherubim were standing on the south of the temple. When the man went, and the cloud filled the inner courtyard. What cloud? They had a word for that, but that word wasn't in the authorized versions, any of them. You've heard the word before, and I won't say it right now because it's not here in the text. Verse 4, and the glory of Yahweh rose up from on the cherub toward the threshold of the house, and the house was filled with the cloud. That's what we will call it, the cloud. And we've seen that before in Egypt. The cloud came down. And the courtyard was filled with the brightness of the glory of Yahweh Elohim. Verse 5. And the sound of the wings of the cherubim were heard as far away as the outer courtyard. It was like the voice of El Shaddai when he speaks. The cloud filled the inner court. This was the cloud of glory seen often in the Old and New Testaments, sometimes called the cloud of glory. It is hard to define the glory of Yahweh. Yahweh would call it the radiant outshining of his character and presence. Here, it was given some visible representation in this cloud. This is, however, the same cloud that stood by Israel in the wilderness. Turn for a second back to Exodus, the 13th chapter, the 21st verse. And you will see what I mean here. Exodus, the 23rd verse, Exodus, the 13th verse, the 21st verse. Exodus, the 13th chapter, the 21st verse. And Yahweh was going before them by day in a column of cloud to lead them on the way, and by night in a column of fire to give them light. Really, that cloud in the daytime covered that hot sun that bear down on them. And at night, that gave them fire. As anyone that has been in the desert at night, it gets cool at night, very cool. And that cloud of fire gave them warmth at night. That puts a different light on their going back on him right now. He even kept them warm at night with that fire, this cloud and column of fire by night. This cloud did not depart from before the people ever. In the daytime, the cloud got, as I said, between the hot sun and the people and cooled them during the day. And they reward him with this now. Ezekiel, the 10th chapter, the 6th verse. And then at his command to the man clothed in linen, take fire from among the wheel area, from among the cherubim. And he went and stood beside the wheel. Verse 7. Then the cherub stretched out his hand from among the cherubim toward the fire that was among the cherubim. And he lifted up and gave it into the hollow of the hand of the man clothed in linen. And he took it, and he went out. And there appeared for the cherubim the form of a human hand under their wings. And I saw, and look, 4 wheels beside the cherubim, 1 wheel beside each cherub. And the appearance of the wheels was like the outward appearance of turquoise stone, a deep blue. Verse 10. Their appearance was the same for each of the 4 of them, as if the wheel were in the midst of a wheel. Verse 11. When they went to the 4 of their directions that they went, they did not change direction when they went. For the place to which the head turned, they went behind him. They did not change direction at their going. And their whole body and their rims and their spokes and their wings and the wheels were full of eyes all around them. I wish we had images. This is something else. The wheels for the 4 of them. Concerning the wheels, he was calling them the wheelwork in my hearing. And each one had 4 faces. The face of the one was the face of a cherub, and the face of the second was the face of a human, and the face of the third was the face of a lion, and the fourth was the face of an eagle. And if I said this before, I'll clarify it here. The only thing that wasn't like a man was the four faces and the hooves like a goat. And the rest of the body was like a man. That's what a cherub looked like. And cherubs were only one class of angels, are several classes of angels. And you all thought they'd look like those little baby angels that, no. Just like that image of the baby Jesus. He's gonna come back this time with a little fire to him. And we don't like that too much either. But we continue at verse 15. And the cherubim rose, that is, the living creatures that I saw at the Kibar River. And when the cherubim went, the wheels beside them went. And when the cherubim lifted their wings to rise up from the earth, the wheels also did not turn aside from beside them. When they stood, they stood. And at their rising, they rose with them, for the spirit of the living creatures was in them. And the glory of Yahweh went out from the threshold of the temple, and it stood above the cherubim. And the cherubim lifted up their wings, and they rose from the earth before my eyes. As they're going out, the wheels were beside them. Somehow these wheels had something to do with them. I don't know. I really don't know. And I'm thinking like some kind of a thing with carrying things around for them. They followed them around. They didn't do anything but follow them around. That sounds more like me to a place to carry things more than anything else, like the chariot of Rome. And the tanks of the United States. Anything that holds your packages while you're at war. Holds your things that assist you in your war-like nature. Things like that. Verse 17. When they stood, they stood. At their rising, they rose with them. You see what I'm talking about? They didn't move. These things didn't move till they moved. And the glory of Yahweh went out from the temple, the threshold of the temple, and it stood above the cherubim. And the cherubim lifted up their wings, and they rose from the earth before my eyes. As they're going out, the wheels were beside them. And he stood at the doorway of the eastern gate of the temple of Yahweh. And the glory of the Elohim of Israel was over them. Wherever they went, these things were right there. This was the living creature that I saw under the Elohim of Israel at the Kibar River. And I saw that they were cherubim. Each one had 4 faces, and there were 4 wings for each. And the likeness of the human hands was under their wings. Not like dogs that don't have any hands. They can't grip anything. These had hands under their wings. They could grip something or punch something if they had to. Verse 22. In the likeness of their faces, they were the faces that I saw at the Kibar River. Thus was their appearance, and they each went straight ahead. Judgment on wicked counselors. Ezekiel, the 11th chapter, the 1st verse. And the Spirit lifted me up, and it brought me up to the eastern gate, the one facing east of the temple of Yahweh. And look, there were 25 men in the doorway of the gate. And I saw Jezaniah, the son of Azur, in the midst of them, and Pelatiah, the son of Benaiah, the commanders of the people. And he said to me, Son of man, these are the men who devise mischief and who are offering bad counsel in this city, who are saying the building of houses is not near, the city is the pot, and we are the flesh. Therefore prophesy against them. Prophesy, Son of man. And the Spirit of Yahweh fell on me, and he said to me, Thus says Yahweh, this is what you think, house of Israel. And I myself know them, the thoughts of your spirit. You made your slain ones numerous in this city, and you have filled its streets with slain ones. Therefore, thus says the sovereign Yahweh, your slain ones whom you put in the midst, they are the flesh, and it is the pot, and I will bring you out from its midst. The sword you have feared, and the sword I will bring against you, declares the sovereign Yahweh. And I will bring you out from its midst, and I will give you into the hands of strangers, and I will execute judgments against you. By the sword you will fall at the border of Israel. I will judge you, and you will know that I am Yahweh. If you didn't know already. It will not be as a pot to you. And so you would be in the midst of it as flesh. For at the border of Israel, I will judge you. And you will know that I am Yahweh, whose rules you did not follow, and whose regulations you did not do. But according to the regulations of the nations around you, you acted. You didn't act like me, you acted like your neighbors. Verse 13. And it happened that I was prophesying, Pelatiah, the son of Benaiah, died. And I fell on my face and I cried with a loud voice and said, "Ah, sovereign Yahweh, you are making a complete destruction of the remnant of Israel." And the word of Yahweh came to me, saying, "Son of man, your brothers, the men of your redemption, and all of the house of Israel, all of it, who said concerning the inhabitants of Jerusalem, they are far from Yahweh. Therefore to us this land was given as a possession with conditions. We didn't go along with those conditions. Something else will obtain. Verse 16. Therefore thus says the sovereign Yahweh, though I have removed them far from among the nations, and though I have scattered them among the countries, yet I was a sanctuary to them for a little while in the countries to which they have gone. Therefore say thus, says the sovereign Yahweh, and I will assemble you from the peoples, and I will gather you from the countries to which you were scattered among all of them. And I will give the land of Israel to you. And when they come there, then they will remove all of its vile idols and all of its detestable things from it. And I will give to them one heart and a new spirit. I will give in their inner parts, and I will remove their hearts of stone from their bodies, and I will give to them a heart of flesh. Note this. A heart of flesh? That means that when they come up, they won't have spirit bodies like everybody else. They will still have flesh. And for years, we weren't taught this. For years, we were never taught this. Verse 20. So that they may walk in my statutes finely, and they will keep my regulations, and they will do them, and they will be to me a people, and I myself will be to them as Elohim, or God. But to the heart of their abominations and the detestable things their hearts were doing, I will bring their way on their heads. Still, declares the sovereign Yahweh. Then the cherubim lifted up their wings, and their wheels were beside them. And the glory of the Elohim of Israel was over them. And the glory of Yahweh went up from the midst of the city, and it stood still on the mountain that is to the east of the city. And the Spirit lifted me up, and it brought me to Chaldea, to the exiles, in the vision by the Spirit of Elohim. And the vision that I had seen left me. And I spoke to the exiles all of the words of Yahweh that he had shown me. Here, Judah's captivity is symbolized. Now the word of Yahweh Elohim came to me. This begins another section of Ezekiel's prophetic work, mainly a series of announcements of judgment against the kings of Judah. First Jerusalem or Israel, then Judah. You dwell in the midst of a rebellious house. Ezekiel was among a rebellious people, those who had been carried into exile under the Babylonians. Ezekiel was also part of the larger community of Israel, including those who still living in the yet to be judged and conquered kingdom of Judah, which has eyes to see but does not see. This was part of the great tragedy for the people of Israel, because they had the word of Elohim, the institution of the priesthood, the sacrifices, and the temple. And because they had the prophets of Yahweh among them, they could have seen and heard, because their priests were men of Yahweh Elohim, but they would not listen to them. We continue in Ezekiel, the 12th chapter, the 1st verse. And the word of Yahweh Elohim came to me, saying, Son of man, you are dwelling in the midst of the house of rebellion, who has eyes to see, and they do not see. They have ears to hear, and they do not hear. For they are a house of rebellion. And you, son of man, prepare for yourself the baggage of an exile, and go into exile by day before their eyes. And you must go into exile from your place to another place before their eyes. Perhaps they will see that they are a house of rebellion. Verse 4. And you must bring out your baggage like the baggage of an exile by day before their eyes. And they must go out in the evening before their eyes, like those who go into exile. Verse 5. Before their eyes dig through for yourself through the wall, and you must bring the baggage out through it, this hole in the wall. Verse 6. Before their eyes, on your shoulder, you must lift up the baggage in the dusk. And your face you must cover, so that you may not see the land. For I make you as a sign to the house of Israel. He's play acting again. Like the time he rolled around naked and all of that. This is one of those episodes. They had nothing else to do for these people, nothing else they heard. And his last act to bring them along was to have Ezekiel act out his prophecies. Verse 7. And I did just as I was commanded. My baggage, like the baggage of an exile, I brought out by day. And in the evening I dug through for myself into the wall with my hand in the dusk. He was digging all day then. I brought the baggage on my shoulder. I carried it before their eyes. And the word of Yahweh came to me in the morning, saying, Son of man, did not they, the house of Israel, the house of rebellion, say to you, what are you doing? Verse 10, say to them, thus says the sovereign Yahweh, this oracle is about the prince in Jerusalem and the entire house of Israel who are among them. Say, I am your sign, and just as I did, so will it be done to them in the exile. In captivity they will go. He said it right out to them. What's their response? Verse 12. And the prince who is in the midst of them, on his shoulder he will carry the baggage in the dusk. And he will go out. The wall will be dug through to bring him through it. And he will cover his face so that he will not see the land with his eye. Verse 13. And I will spread out my net on him, and he will be captured in my hunting snare. And I will bring him to Babylon, the land of the Chaldeans. But he will not see it. And there he will die. And all who are around him, his help, and all of his troops, I will scatter in every direction. And I will draw the sword behind them, and they will know that I am Yahweh. When I scatter them among the nations, and I scatter them in the countries, but I will spare from them a few men from the sword, the ones that didn't had the mark. They did have the mark. Not the mark of the beast, the mark of Yahweh, the Sabbath, and all that appertains to it. Just like the end times. Verse 16. But I will spare from them a few men from the sword, from the famine, and from the plague, so that they may tell of all of their abominations among the nations to which they will go. And they will know that I am Yahweh. And the word of Yahweh came to me, saying, Son of man, you must eat your food with trembling. At least you have food. And your water with shuddering. And with anxiety you must drink. And you must say to the people of the land, thus says the sovereign Yahweh to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, about the land of Israel. They will eat their food with anxiety, and their water they will drink with horror, because their land will be desolate from its fullness because of all the violence of those who are dwelling in it. And the inhabited cities will be desolate, and the land will be a desolation, and you will know that I am Yahweh. And the word of Yahweh came to me, saying, Son of man, what is this proverb you people have about the land of Israel, saying, the days are prolonged, and every vision has come to nothing. 23. Therefore say to them, thus says the sovereign Yahweh, I will put an end to this proverb, and they will not quote it as a proverb again in Israel. But say to them, the days are near, and also the words of every vision are near. 24. For there will not be any longer any false vision or flattering divination in the midst of the house of Israel. For I, Yahweh, I will speak what I will speak as a word, and it will be done. It will no longer itself not start over. It will not prolong itself any longer. For in your days, house of rebellion, I will speak a word and I will fulfill it, declares the sovereign Yahweh. And the word of Yahweh came to me, saying, Son of man, look, the house of Israel is saying, the vision that is seeing for many days now, and for distant times, he is prophesying. Therefore say to them, thus says the sovereign Yahweh, none of my words will be prolonged any longer. That I speak as a word, and it will be fulfilled, declares the Master Yahweh. Any questions? Comments? Need any clarifications on anything?
I think if we got clarification on this, we'd be scared to death.
Some of this is very clear in some other places. A lot of this, I find the solutions in Revelation, and some of it in Jeremiah and other places. This is his way of disguising what's coming in the end time for everybody. And a lot of us, including your minister, don't yet put the whole picture in line. I got the pieces together, but they don't fit together yet. Any more? Dwayne.
There was a prophecy online that simply stated that August the 6th, you will not go about your daily business as you normally would. No elaboration at all on it. Just keep it in your mind, that's a Sabbath. So,
Yep.
it may not be an average day.
Yep. We know, to the point we know it, everything in the prophecies will occur on the days prophetically, the holy days that they will occur on. The one thing you have to do, whoever you are, we are, is go to the place you're on those days. You're on the place that you're supposed to be on those days. Nothing bad will happen to you on those days, whenever those days are. Well, a lot of people don't even keep those days anymore. And those are the ones that you hear all the time saying that that stuff is done away. If that stuff is done away, your afterlife also is done away. And you don't know where you're supposed to be on those days. The weekly Sabbaths is as it says so many times in this book. Anytime you see Sabbaths plural, that is inclusive of the holy days as well. And some people, well, I'm not going today. I got something to do. And that day, if it occurs on that day, like the other women, they came back later and nobody was home. It's very important at this stage of the game, if you call it a game. I don't. Obedience is the key. Your afterlife is the lock. You don't have the key, you're not getting in. It's that simple.
No.
Develop.
Yeah. I was looking for the scripture that said the wheels was behind him, and his hands rose up, or the wheels was beside him. So what did the wheels do? I mean, it said then his hands came out, and the wheels. I didn't understand that. The wheels.
He was.
What were the wheels? They was always beside him, or they rolling them along, or.
I don't know what they exactly did, but the only time he went to them, any one of these cherubim, they were getting something from the wheels. Yeah. They apparently, apart from the eyes everywhere, the things that they were carrying that they needed were on these carriages or whatever they were.
And his hands came out up under the wings, but the wheels came out. I was just wondering, and he went straight ahead, so was the I don't know.
There's not enough information there right here anyway to divulge that in any realistic way.
The wheels are rolling?
Sometimes. Wherever they were, most of the time the wheels were not rolling, they were just round. So most of the time they traveled, the wheels were off the ground.
Yeah. So the
following
man was
them.
walking or flying?
No, they were flying. They were flying.
And the wheels was rolling.
Flying with them. Flying right.
Flying saucers.
If we were there and had seen it in person, we would still be scratching our heads over what it was.
Yeah.
Exactly.
These were eyewitness representations, but these things were so strange to him, having not seen them before. He had no realistic way to convey them to us.
And all those eyes in the wheels. The wheel is round, so it was eyes all going round in the wheel.
And all of the commentaries say something different, and they don't agree at all.
Oh.
That's usually bad news.
Yeah.
Well, there's another reason for that, too.
Yeah.
We don't need to know.
Right.
Exactly.
We're just get it.
Thurman.
Pastor, in Ezekiel chapter 9, verse 6, when Yahweh tells the angels to go out and begin at his sanctuary first, to destroy those that were disobedient. I thought about 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 17, how he also begins judgment at the household of Elohim.
Yep.
And that reads, for the time has come for judgment to begin at the house of Elohim. And if it begins with us first, what will be the end of those who do not obey the gospel of Elohim? And then verse 18 real quick. Now if the righteous one is scarcely saved, where will the ungodly and the sinner appear? So he begins at his house, cleaning up stuff.
He's serious.
That means that all the people that's speaking, that's supposed to be speaking the truth are not speaking it.
That's why largely we're not where we're supposed to be spiritually, because the people that we have depended on for that information don't have it.
And
It's not that it's not here. They don't use this. Most of these churches nowadays, they have their own book. It's a combination of this with their own doctrines. And those doctrines don't reflect this in any way, shape, or form. They every once in a while hit on something that occurs here, but they're supposed to be like this. One hand washing the other.
But they know better, but they don't want to say it. I mean, nobody's afraid anymore.
They will be soon enough.
I mean, some of them know better.
Most of them know
Speak
better.
on those things, you know.
You heard what's called this week, Creflo. He decried everything he's spoken for the last 10 years about the Sabbath. I mean, about tithing.
I knew
He left everything else alone. That stuff was wrong too in my eyes, but he doesn't say so. And then after saying all of that, he wouldn't apologize for any of it. What's the point?
But doesn't the Bible said if you know better and you don't speak it, you're gonna get it worse than anybody else that you're speaking it to. Isn't that right?
Well, he pronounced his own sentence by saying he did nothing wrong.
Was it?
I don't say there's nothing I can say behind that. He said it all. He said it all.
But it says that for leading my people the wrong way,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna get yours.
That's in there. They don't believe in there.
The part where it says, when the angels would flap their wings above, they were, and the wheels within the wheels, they were right above or no beneath
Somewhere
the
in their
river
vicinity.
Kibar. Is there a
Each one was a little bit different, but the thing was right by them somewhere where they would reach the things that they were carrying in these
Okay.
vehicles or whatever they are.
But there's no significance in why it was by the river Kibar?
That's where he first saw them.
Okay.
That's where he first saw them.
When Christ comes, Pastor, will we be able to see these angels?
In the end time.
Okay.
In the end time. Dwayne.
When I go down to what had been my hometown, I love to befuddle the people that are there. And I know I nailed one guy out at the pavilion at the church service. I said, I've driven all over this town and I've looked at all these churches. I can't find a Christian church in the entire town. What do you mean? I said, you ever see the scripture that Christ said, not everybody that calls me Lord, Lord will be with me in paradise, but those who do the will of my Father which is in heaven. You know, how call you me Lord, Lord, and do not the things that I say? What did he say? He said, keep the Sabbath day holy. And nobody does. They made up their own Sabbath day and they think they're all just right. And are they going to be in for a surprise? I wish I could find a Sabbath-keeping church down here, but there are none.
Somebody said that the day that you rest is your Sabbath, whatever day that is. I heard that's
They're
the day
going to
that you
live by
rest.
that. And if they
Yeah.
repent of it, they're going to die by that.
Pastor, there was just one other thing that I thought of in thinking about the whatever that is that, Yahweh was riding on with the cherubs and the wheels. It was in Psalms 18, something David wrote, King David wrote in verse 10, speaking of Yahweh, and he rode upon a cherub and flew. He flew upon the wings of the wind. So it just makes me wonder, that was David saying that.
Well, and in the scriptures too, what do we take literally as opposed to figuratively?
I kind of don't have one answer for that. But as you go through the book more and more, and you don't read it once and go away from it, like a lot of people do.
Exactly. And so if they do take it literally, a lot of times they shouldn't.
But the thing is, you don't know what to do until you get a handle on what each piece means individually and how they come together. And that's a lifetime expenditure.
That's what they said. That's what I heard. It said it's just a parable. Something that fits.
What is a parable, though? It is an example. It's not real. That's why they say that. It's not real to them. I heard it all the time. Thurman.
In the Torah, there's a verse that says, the secret things belong to Yahweh our God, but the things that are revealed belong to us. It was something like that. I might have it switched around a little bit, but you ever heard that one?
I hear.
Yeah, so he's giving us the canonized scriptures, to be going by and stuff, and so it behooves us to, get familiar with it and try to, pray for understanding.
Yep.
Everybody got their own Bible,
There's a reason for that, too. Everybody has their own way to look at it, and the filter is always their own personal denominational distinctives. And those distinctives largely are not found here.
This way.
No, we are our own permission.
like the Catholic.
Savannah, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to ask a question. In chapter 10, 6. I don't understand it. Is he talking about hell? What is he saying? 10:6. When the cherub, when he told the man to get the fire from the cherubim, he come there and get it.
No, those were ashes from something that they burned at some point, and they threw them into Jerusalem to burn the people that were there. That wasn't the ever burning hell, but for them it was their personal hell.
Okay. I've read it over and over. I've read it before, but I never understood that. Thank you.
Yep. That was their punishment for that things that they had done up to that point. Which those things were largely their disobeying God or Elohim. Any more?
We need to be where we ought to be to have any degree of safety. And I would elaborate on that we need to be where we have always been. Because you can't just go run to the temple and get safe.
Yes.
Not going to happen.
Oh, it's not?
It's all a part of a system. And you don't go to that system every other day.
Yeah.
Because one of those other days he could call the whole thing down.
Yeah. You can't sneak out the back door of a whorehouse and run into the back door of the temple and think you're going to be safe. It's not going to happen.
What kings did that?
Not going to happen. And believe me, there's plenty of that going on in our government.
Yes.
More than you'd ever imagine.
Nothing new.
Pastor Curtis, I have a question.
Yes.
It continues to show, Yahweh continues to show us his sovereign love for Israel with the pillar of the cloud of day, and by night it was the fire. Stated it kept them warm. Stated it gets cold at night, and the blazing flame, it continued to keep the children of Israel warm, and they still didn't see his sovereign love, what he was doing, how he felt about them. And he continuously did that for them when he brought them up out of Egypt, the pillar of the cloud and the fire.
Yep.
It's his sovereign love. He was still there hoping that they will get this. And everything was right there. It's so amazing. So
Yep.
amazing.
And it's still going to be there for them until the end, but just like everybody else, when they go before him as flesh in the kingdom of God or Yahweh, if they fail then, that's it. Lights out forever.
Yes.
And that's a terrible thing for them, because they were at one time his hope for everyone. He put them in that position because of he knew already that they were rebellious people to the max. And in his mind, he would get them first, and then everybody else would come along. But that didn't happen. And some of us are going to get in, while a lot of them, it's already down to a remnant. A remnant is not your whole dress. Any woman knows what a remnant is. And that's not everybody. That's not the whole dress. That's not everybody. And and a lot of people still say that's everybody. The people in Israel still say that they are all going to be saved. And a lot of funerals I've gone to, people said that everybody was going to be saved. I don't call anybody out, because people have, as long as there's breath in their bodies, they can repent of the things that they've said. But I have had a lot of ministers get before a body in a funeral service and say that all Israel will be saved. And they don't have any buts or add-ons to apportion that in any way, shape, or form. But the book does. I would go with the book. That's why in here and other places, he says, when you go in to kill people, start at my sanctuary. Start at my sanctuary. That says right there, equivalent. That nothing will be as it is down here. He starts with his own people. his own people first. Everybody else, family, get over there and I'll hide y'all and y'all will get a little bit more. I'll hide y'all a little bit more. He doesn't hide his. His are first ones punished. Because it shows to everybody else, I'm going to get mine first. What chance do you have? What chance do you have other than obedience? That's real.
That mark
Mm-hmm.
that they were talking about putting on the forehead of those who would be saved, you can't forge that. That's probably an invisible mark put on by an invisible angel. You didn't even know you got it, and you won't know who's got it. So don't depend on getting a mark on your forehead. You don't know what it is or what it looks like.
Yes, but this is the Old Testament also.
Yeah.
And the mark in the New Testament, as far as I know, is going on in that water, and you come up and get your hands laid on, and that is the mark right there. And it is important, whether that's a Sabbath-keeping church that you do that within, or you don't understand completely what you did.
And I do like how in that same scripture it says that mark is because of how those people did not like the detestable sin. So it was that thought process going on in them. Yeah, that was that mark. That I
Yes.
not necessarily physically, but
He was marking them spiritually.
right.
The ones that didn't like what was going on and physically showed it in some way.
Right.
It's would that way be something as simple as crying or crying out or getting in somebody's face, you did this. All of those things were going on. And anybody that was seen doing those things, those angels marked them as somebody that didn't agree with what was going on. But our work, our mark is already there. It's the Sabbath day and the holy days with it and everything that he tells us to do. And the total faith.
Doesn't it say we're sealed with the Holy Spirit?
Yes. Same thing. All of this is a part of a system. And you're either in that system or not in that system. There is no halfway.
Some of it, some of it, some of that.
I hear that a lot, but I don't see those people much. Well, that's all I've got. Until next week.
Those website references you sent out, anybody that didn't go to them and watch them, they made a big mistake.
I've got a couple of people that their stuff bounced back. And Joyce, at some point, give me